shop just outside of Kennesaw here in North Georgia. Well, today's project is this old chest of drawers. I picked up this chest of drawers a couple of weeks ago at local Goodwill. I believe I paid about $20 for it. I'm not exactly sure. And at first glance, it looks pretty rough. The finish is beat. There's deep dings and scratches, and I'll bring it up to show you this stuff. But there's value here as far as a quality piece of furniture. Recently I watched a YouTube video where a young lady got a Goodwill find and was going to restore it and paint it and make it pretty for a little girl's bedroom. And the piece that she chose was so badly damaged, and it was such a piece of junk that it just wasn't worth restoring. It wasn't worth doing anything with. And the thought came to me that maybe I should share with you some of the things that I look for when I buy a piece for restoration. All right, the first thing I want to look at is just the piece in general. I know from my experience that this is a piece of maple or birch or beech furniture. It's probably in a colonial revival style. It's probably from the 1950s, maybe a little bit earlier. It was real popular at one time, not so popular now. Aesthetically, I don't believe these pieces look very good painted. I think they look boxy and plain. And I had a conversation with my friend who owns the used furniture store, and he says he feels that the painted furniture fad is starting to go away and that people are looking again for more natural looks in their furniture, but with color. They like deep reds, dark browns, and this industrial kind of gray, almost like a pickling color. So we'll do this in a deep burnt umber, and it'll be beautiful. And let's take a look at how we identify that this is quality. First thing we're going to do is look at the top. The top is solid wood. How do we know the top is solid wood? Because you can see here where it's routed through, the grain lines continue. We flip it around, and you see there, this is wood, it's not particle board. Next thing you look at is the back. If you've ever seen some of the IKEA type furniture, it comes in a box and the back is a folded up piece of cardboard. This is a piece of 1/4 inch or 3/8 inch plywood. It's nailed on, and you can see that the nails have been there so long that they've actually stained the wood. This is the original back. At one time it had a furniture label. Now granted, there's a little warping here, a little bit of water issue or moisture issue, but that's fine, that's not a problem. And we continue to swing it around. We do have a piece of this corner that's been blown out, but that's an easy fix with some epoxy. I'll show you how to do that in a little while. And you look at the sides are all solid wood as well. So you're looking at a solid wood carcass, so that's a good thing. Usually the first place I look for quality on a piece of furniture is the drawers. So let's look at the drawers. First of all, we have solid wood applied handles. We have a solid wood maple face. We have solid wood sides and a solid wood bottom. The sides are constructed with machine cut dovetails, which is a very strong joint. And then as we pull the drawer out the rest of the way, if you look at the back joint, these are boxer finger joints. And actually, these are a little bit stronger than the dovetails, but the dovetails aesthetically are more pleasing. So the drawer is solid wood, the bottom is solid wood, the drawer runner is a piece of solid wood. A lot of the modern furniture, you will see the drawer runners will be mechanical and not always so sturdy. These little, I think they call them pinch clips or something, are hammered in here to keep the drawer from pushing too far back in the case. They're often missing. You can replace them or just glue a little thin block of wood here. You can see, indicators of the age of this. The drawer sides have, rubbed against this rail over the years and made a divot here. I think that's quite charming. It's not affecting the use of the drawer at all. And if you look inside, you can see this piece is made entirely of solid hardwood. All the drawers are the same. And then down here we have a chip off of the leg. That's not a big deal to replace or to fix. And then we have a missing button here, and it's kind of interesting. Lots of times those are screws. In this case, it's covering a nail. And then the final thing that's kind of interesting to me is if you look at the hardware that holds the handles on, they're standard slot screws. if they were Phillips head screws, you'd be able to date this pretty much conclusively after World War II. That's when Phillips head screws um, really came into popular use. But just because it's slotted head screws doesn't make it pre-war. But it's just another indicator that this piece is vintage for certain. So there we are. This is why I picked this up, and I believe it's worth saving. And because it's such a nice piece of furniture, and because I don't want to paint it, we're going to do a complete refinishing on it. So we'll strip it, sand it, seal it, color it, lacquer, top coat it, and be done. All of those things you've seen me do before in other videos, so I'll just give you highlights of those things. But the real pieces I wanted you to take away from this video is how to look and identify a quality piece of furniture. And if you really don't know what you're doing, pull the drawer out and take a look at the joinery. Just because there's not dovetails there doesn't mean it's a piece of junk. Sometimes there's a locking rabbet joint up here, or sometimes there's other forms. But look at the entire thing. Solid wood construction, solid wood bottom, box joints, dovetail joints, solid wood construction, solid wood handles, solid wood carcass, wooden drawer runners with appropriate wear on them. This piece is worth saving. So with that in mind, let's get to work. Okay, it's about 11:30. We started this project a little after 9 this morning, and the drawers are all stripped. That's how they look there. We've got some deep scratches on some of the drawers that we'll steam out, and we've got the drawer handles are all stripped and wiped down with lacquer. This one here has got a little residual finish, but we'll get that sanded off. You saw this already. We're just sitting out in the sun drying off. So the next step is sanding, and then to steam out some of these dents. Okay, it's time to address some of these deep scratches and gouges in the tops and in the drawers. What we're going to try to do is steam them out. You've seen me do this on at least 2 other videos. This will give you an idea about the size of what we're dealing with here. This is, I think, a 4-inch square, so that'll give you an idea how big this scratch is. It's right square in the middle of the top. What we're going to do is put a damp rag on top of this and then put a hot steam iron on top of it. The steam will drive into the wood fibers. The wood fibers that are currently crushed from the scratch, we hope will expand back where they belong, closer to level here, so we don't have to sand this entire top to this depth. When you get a divot this deep and you try to sand it out, inevitably you turn the sander sideways and you wind up, pull this back a little bit, you'll wind up with a divot in the finish, and you don't really see it until you put your top coat on, and then it looks awful. So this one is the one we're going to work on first, and then if you look at the top here, we've got another one right here along the edge, pretty good dent here, another one here. So I'll bring you along on this repair, and then we will tackle the other ones off camera. And then we have the same kind of issues on a number of the drawers. Now the last time I had the bright idea of filming this close, the camera steamed up almost immediately. So if it does, bear with me. So you want to put a clean wet rag on here. I know this looks dirty, but I just took it out of the wall. It's an old shop rag, but it's clean. Stained, but clean. Let's see how we're doing. Okay, that's coming up already. And again, you're not looking to get rid of that color, but you're looking to get the depth to change, so there's not as much of a deep divot there. And there's the sauna view. Okay, we've got from here to here nice and flat. We're still deep right here and fairly flat right there, so let's give it another nice finger around a little bit here. And obviously, if we still have something that's too deep, we can always fill it. And I've got a feeling that after I sand this top, I may wind up grain filling it, which is unusual for maple, but it looks like it's probably had some old water damage, and the grain, at least on one of the boards, is fairly open, and I've got to get that closed up, but we'll deal with that when the time comes. There we go. Look at that. We have a little bit of a depth right there, but this is flat. That's flat. So I'm going to keep working on this, but this is how we do it. And the idea is, again, to get everything up as close to level as we can, let it dry, so when we sand it, we have a nice flat surface. Okay, that's how we steam up dents. Hey, since the last time we talked, I got 2 coats of sealer sanded between each coat and ready for color. As you know, I mix my own color. What I use is a little bit of lacquer, a little bit of dye stain, this is in burnt umber, and a whole lot of lacquer thinner. It gets mixed together in my mixing and my spray gun, and this is the color that we're going to be shooting on. This is a little bit darker of a toner than I normally use, but I do want this dresser to come out fairly dark because the maple grain is pretty plain, so I think the color is going to be important. So we're ready to shoot it. I'll get you set up and we'll start shooting some color and see how it comes out. Okay, we got the first coat of color on it and it's sealed in with its first coat of lacquer. When I shoot a color scheme like this, particularly on this maple, because it's, you know, the grain on maple is pretty plain, I like to go with a lot of tones in the wood. For example, I went darker here at the bottoms of these feet than I did up here in the bottom and the body. And as you look, there's places where I went darker. It basically just applied more color. And that gives it that almost that sun-worn look that you get in antiques, where you have multiple tones of the same color in the same piece. So when I do this, obviously I'm not looking for a uniform color. I like highlights like this, like the difference between that right there, which is gold, and that right there, which is a darker reddish brown. I hope that it's coming out in the camera. And then here's the handles, and again, same deal. We've got spots where we're a little bit lighter, and then spots where we're a little bit darker, and that gives it that, again, gives it that aged look. So we're going to let this set for an hour or so. I'll come back out here and take a look at it and maybe put another coat of lacquer on it and then let it set overnight and keep going. But that's what it looks like so far, and as soon as the lacquer hardens up, I think what I'll probably wind up doing, so the colors are as close as they can be, is to reassemble the dresser. This will probably be tomorrow after the lacquer hardens, and then take a look at it, see if it needs any color adjustment, and then shoot a final coat of lacquer on it while it's assembled, and we'll be done. So there we go. Good morning. It's the next day. The lacquer's had plenty of time to harden up. About 24 hours we can move forward. Looking pretty good. The next step is to put the handles back on. Okay, here's the drawer handle, and you can see by looking at the back of it that whatever fastener that is used just screws right into the wood. There's no metal inserts in any of these holes. And if you look at the original fastener hardware, it's really just a bolt. There's no point here like you would find on a wood screw. So to drive these in with any force, you're going to run the risk of splitting this. And I'll be honest with you, I'm going to be holding my breath putting these all back on. So a little tip for you, anytime you're inserting a fastener that you're concerned about, is just take an old candle. I'll find these wherever, and I just kind of keep them. And drag your threads across the candle wax, just like so, and it'll catch in the grooves of the threads. And then when you screw it in, the wax acts like a lubricant, and it helps the screw go in and reduces the friction. So that's a nice little tip for you to keep in mind. Okay, I'm going to get all these drawer handles back on, and then we'll go from there. Another drawer tip involving wax is to use wax to lubricate the friction points on the drawers. For example, we know the construction of these drawers is such that this surface here, this surface here, and this surface here will bear down on these runners inside the drawer, here, here, and here. So what you can do, and what I normally do, is I'll just take some candle wax, and I'll just rub candle wax on these surfaces, both in the case and on the drawer. And it really does go a long way in helping the drawer slide nice and evenly and easily. As we've talked about before, you know, really tops of pieces as well as drawers that operate smoothly and correctly are huge selling points. So that's a real good tip for you. Well, here she is all put back together, and frankly I'm very pleased with the way this came out. There's no need to do any color touch-ups anywhere on the drawers. The sides look great. Everything is right where we would want it to be. The top is actually very smooth, and I was very fortunate. I got a very nice finish, and you know, obviously paying attention to the details in between helped. There's just a little bit of orange peel, a little bit of roughness, and honestly, if you ran your hand across this like I'm doing, you'd think it was fine, and it really is fine. But what the heck, we're here, we've got the time. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wet sand the top of this with some 400 wet paper, and we'll flatten this out just a little bit, and then I'm going to shoot a final coat of lacquer on it, and I'll thin that lacquer out a little bit with some lacquer thinner, and it'll flow very nicely, and that will give us our final finish. And if we have to, we can use a little steel wool and wax, or steel wool and wool lube, and rub it out. But I think we're in really good shape. So let me get this wet sanded, and we'll shoot a final coat of lacquer on it, and we'll be done. But this is really a beautiful piece, and I'm very happy about the way it came out, and I really hope someone enjoys this. Okay, be right back when we wet sand. And we're ready to wet sand. What I'm going to use as a lubricant is just some spray-on soap and water. You can use wool lube, you can use mineral oil, or I'm sorry, mineral spirits, whatever you want. There's all sorts of different things you can use. I've got a sanding block. This one's rubber, and I'll see how it does along here. If I start to see where it's, you know, if it's digging into, you know, any of the places around the scallops, I'll go to using my hand rather than the sanding block. And then some 400 wet dry paper is what I'll use, and then I just squirt on the water, which acts as a lubricant and also carries the sanding dust off with it. And we're not trying to sand through anything. What we're just trying to do is lightly sand to smooth the surface. So really the only pressure I'm using here is the weight of the block and maybe a little bit from me. And as you get this smooth, you're going to feel a suction like that, where the sanding block is actually being held to the surface with suction because it's starting to get nice and smooth. And I'm getting that drag right here very well. Okay, let me get the rest of this done, and I will bring you back. And for the edges, I'm just taking the paper off the block, molding it to the shape, and very gently across the edges. Anytime you're sanding anything with color, you have to be extremely careful around the edges, because you'll go through the edges, through the finish of your edges and into your color in a heartbeat. So be real careful. Okay, that's been wet sanded. Let me get it wiped off, and we'll see how we did. Okay, I'm hoping you can see these flattened spots. I'm shooting the best I can with a camera raking light, but that's where the 400 grit took the high spots off of the finish. Now we could rub this out with some steel wool and get it really flat and polish it, or we could rub it out with steel wool and shoot some lacquer on it. But I think, frankly, for where we are and what we've got here, this is ready to shoot a final lacquer coat on the top, and then it'll be done. So let's get on to that. And there's our top with a coat of lacquer on it. So there you go. I would say this baby is done. From a $20 Goodwill find to that, I enjoyed it. I hope you did too. Listen, from our shop just outside of Kennesaw here in North Georgia, thanks for watching. Best regards. Take care.